Yes, I'm here. You're here, and we are ready. We are ready for today's presentation. So, good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Hi, it's good to see you, even though I can't see you. But I'd love to hear from you. So, comments, I'm going to make sure I have that open and I'll get to it mostly at the end. I am Jim Harrison. I always have been. I've been working with essential oils for a long time, 30 years. And I've done, pretty much everything you can do except for distillation and the whole production thing. So I've been in skincare. That's how I started with essential oils. And I've been in formulating and production. So I've had a skincare line, co-founded one of the first plant-based skincare lines here in the US. And I also created and taught the essential oil certificate program for the medical university, Bastyr University. Now, they've set me free. I'm loose in the world. And I'm bringing all of this to you through live streams. And also, you can bring me out where you are. I've been doing some retreats that have been really awesome. I just got back from the Bahamas. It was really interesting. That one was interesting because it was a local crowd instead of people who vacationing or going to retreats or resorts. So the situation or the culture and how I taught was very different from how I would normally do that for a retreat, but absolutely how I would do that just in talking with people. And that's what I like to do. That's what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk to you. And I'm going to talk to you today about protecting your skin from sun damage. This was an adventure for me, which I'm going to get into. Just want to tell you that this is my email address if you want to get in touch with me. And I'm going to hide that now. I'm also going to hide this guy here and get to my presentation, show you what I have for slides, right? That's what we want to see. We want to see the slides. Give me some slides. For some reason, what I'm looking for isn't there. One more thing. There we go. Now I'm there. Okay. So today, this is what I'm going to do. Protection against sun damage using essential oils, foods, and botanical extracts. This was not a topic that I had planned to dive into. Actually, when I did this, I wasn't even thinking about how botanicals could protect from sun damage. The story I'll be telling you gives you that exploration and how I just learned everything I'm going to be teaching you today. It all started when like I said, I co-founded a skincare company and we created a serum. And the serum had a red algae extract called astaxanthin. I'll be showing you that later if you want to know how to spell it. And I knew that had UV protection. And that was the base, well, not the basis. That was, one of the highlights of the formula, the serum, all botanicals. And when I started using this, I noticed my pale bald head was not getting sunburned anymore. Now, what I mean by that is I come from Boston. In Boston, it's not exactly summer weather until July. And I would take trips to California, LA, hop off the airplane, go to a cafe, sit outside. Within 20 minutes, my head was burning. And it's because I wasn't careful. I wasn't putting the sunscreen on. I wasn't doing all the right things that you're supposed to do, like wear a hat. So I'm going to repeat this, say it now, then I'm going to repeat it later. Don't necessarily do what I do what I teach and do what I say, okay? Because, you'll find out. When I moved out to Seattle area, that's where I co-founded the skincare company. And we were putting formulas together that mostly were based on my diet and the supplements that I take. And I had owned a spa. Okay, so a lot of this development was from my own study of nutrition and herbs and how it worked within my spa or a salon setting. I was a hairdresser, so that's mainly what I did was hair, and then I had other people doing some other services. And the programs I put together were all based on nutrition. So when I went out, when I discovered essential oils, I sold the salon, became an educator. And I would tell my students that list, best foods to eat, and then the list of what the best botanical ingredients would be. And my students say, well, where can we get that? And I say, well, you can't get it. Because at the time, nobody was doing plant-based skincare in the way that I was formulating in my head at that time. And then when I came out to Seattle, co-founded a skincare company, brought all that information in. Okay. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is because what I'm going to be teaching you is based on what I experienced, what I observed, and then what I researched for a scientific paper that I wrote. That's what we're going to get into with this little talk here. So let me just kind of move into this. Here's what we'll learn today. Let me bring that up a little closer for you. We're going to look at plant extracts that, through my research, I can tell you that they are good for protection and restoration based on sun damage. Actually, based on anything, just really good skincare. We're going to look at internal protection. What that means mainly is diet, okay? So diet is really important here, okay? I'm talking topical. I'm going to show you a skincare recipe or a serum recipe that I created. And I'm also going to talk about the foods, the best foods to eat. So that's what I mean by internal, is your diet and supplements. And then your external is going to be the serum. Then, like I said, I'm going to give you some formulations and show you how all this works. Let's first talk about ultraviolet radiation, which is what's coming from the sun and what causes the sun damage. It's UV radiation. And what does this do to the skin? Well, it penetrates into the dermis, and it's causing oxidative stress and collagen degradation. So the UV damage also affects the epidermis, causing DNA damage and inflammation. Things I'm listing here, not good for the skin. And it's not only UV radiation that do these things, okay? So, we can take what I'm going to be teaching you today, and if you're not out in the sun and you're exposed to a lot of environmental toxins or other things that cause oxidative damage, you can use these same recipes. You can use these same information for just protection in general for your skincare. One of the things that UV radiation does is it generates free radicals. And we know the free radicals cause cellular damage and also DNA damage. And so this is a really important feature here, or something to pay attention to, is that UV damage is oxidative damage or free radical damage. What do you need for that? You need antioxidants, right? So we know how to do this. So the also that I'm pointing out here, damaged structural molecules and degrades type 1 and type 3 collagen. So that's kind of what creates what we can consider premature aging of the skin, or just creates damage in the skin, which we can relate to as we look at it as we're aging, as aging skin. So these are the things that we want to protect against, right? The UV damage is causing this list of issues, and how can we protect ourselves from it? First of all, before I moved, I was just going to move to the next slide. So I had to pause. This poor kid, right? We've seen this before. We've probably seen it on ourselves when we were that age, right? A lot of the damage you see as you get into your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s is damage that was caused when you were just a little thing, right? So up to age 18, the damage, sunburns, things like that were occurred in your skin, it's an accumulation, but also it's just a series of interactions that eventually shows as damaged skin that you don't relate to that it was 30 years ago that this happened, but this is partly what you're seeing is like what this kid does. He's going to see his skin looking, what the damage is in about 30 years. That's what's going to happen there. Now, why plants? We're talking about botanicals. We're talking about essential oils. We're talking about herbal extracts and other types of extracts, mostly nutritional, but plant-based is what we're talking about here. So these are the things that plants in the environment, okay? Plants produce secondary metabolites to protect themselves against UV radiation, bacteria, fungi, oxidative stress, and many other things. What plant-based secondary metabolites do? The reason that the plants build these secondary metabolites, now just to explain secondary metabolites in a simple way, that's generally the extracts, the essential oils are secondary metabolites. The phenolic compounds, the flavonoids, the carotenoids, all of these compounds that we hear about in food or in plants that we use as our protection and as our nutrition. These are the secondary metabolites that the plant builds to harmonize and protect itself from the environment. So not only UV radiation, but from parasites and different fungus and all the other things that plants are exposed to. I mean, plants can't, uproot themselves and run off to the hospital to a doctor, right? So they had to create their own hospital within their structure. That's what the secondary metabolites are doing. Now, as an example, frankincense, which grows in a harsh, dry desert climate, it produces compounds that provide the protection from that hot, damaging sun or from the UV radiation from the sun, as well as protecting from the free radicals or the oxidative damage that would be coming from that. One of the things about frankincense is, or just another point that explains what the secondary metabolites are doing. When we buy frankincense essential oil or the supercritical extract, whatever you're getting, what you're getting are the secondary metabolites that the plant produced to protect itself, harmonize with the environment. Those secondary metabolites, the plant didn't build them for us. I mean, it's nice that we have access to them, but the plant produced it for its own protection. And that essence, that volatile compounds, meaning evaporating compounds, that's what essential oils are out of those secondary metabolites. Those compounds will create a shield, kind of a moisture shield around the plant, protecting it from that environment. Also, internally, the resins running through the plant are also frankincense. When you think about frankincense, one of the things that, or actually two of the things beneficial for skin, antioxidant protection and anti-inflammatory. Those are two things that the plant produced as secondary metabolites to also protect itself from the environmental damage, especially the UV damage coming from that hot, hot, hot desert sun. All right, so the chemistry from the plants, antioxidants, anti-inflammatory, and cell regenerative properties. These are the three main things that your skin needs as far as sun protection, or actually any kind of protection. Free radicals, protection from free radicals, that's the antioxidant. Protecting from the damage that inflammation causes, that's the anti-inflammatory. And then if the cells are damaged, or if there's some compromising thing or system happening within your skin and your cells aren't producing healthy cells, these compounds can also help produce healthy cells. So it'll help eliminate damaged cells and help regenerate healthy cells so the skin looks really, really good, right? So this is what I was just saying. The three functions every essential oil or every skincare formula should have is anti-inflammatory, cell regeneration, and antioxidant, okay? These are the three things. Let you kind of look up that nice and close. Anti-inflammatory, and that's interrupting the cascade of UV-induced damage. Okay, so that's if we're talking specifically about the damage from UV rays. The regeneration, restoring collagen, and I did state that collagen gets damaged from UV rays. and renewing the skin, and then neutralizing free radicals generated by UV radiation. That's what the antioxidant activity is all about. Yes, essential oils for sun protection. I have a couple of slides about this. I'm just going to blow this up for a second so you can take a screenshot, whatever you do. And these are 3 essential oils that I have high on my list of protecting from UV damage. And Atlas cedarwood. Atlas cedarwood grows in the Atlas Mountains in Morocco. It's one of my favorite oils as a base oil, as a skincare oil, because it does have good antioxidant protection. It has good anti-inflammatory properties, and it does have good cell regenerative properties. So as a skincare essential oil, this can go in almost every formula for every skin type. The copaiba, that is an anti-inflammatory, provides some cellular support and some wound healing properties. What's interesting about the way I define these is that I kept changing the words that meant the same thing, because these oils, each of these oils that I have here, are very similar in their therapeutic properties, right? So I can say anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, cell regeneration about each one of these. Now, frankincense, as already discussed, when you see how that behaves in its own environment, we can take those secondary metabolites, and when we use them on our cells, we're providing some of that same protection, a similar type of protection. They're antioxidant, anti-inflammatory. There's cell regenerative properties to frankincense. There's also the emotional aspect, which I'm not going to get into too much here, but each of these oils, when I talk about the emotional impact of skincare, it's using these oils that help to do that. Now, sandalwood, there are 2 different sandalwoods that I recommend. There's more than that in the marketplace, but they're not quite as common as what I would consider Indian sandalwood or Mysore sandalwood. That is Santalum album. And that is the sandalwood. When you hear sandalwood, that's the sandalwood most people are referring to. It can be a challenge to get a real oil because it's only recently been put into plantations where up until a handful of years ago, the Indian government made it illegal to export any kind of sandalwood, anything. And so they created a synthetic, and that's mainly what's in the marketplace. The Santalum album is now being produced in plantations. You'll find them in Indonesia, Sri Lanka. Some are being developed also in the whole country of India. Southern part, I believe, is where it grows. And then Australia. Australia has Santalum album plantation, which is one of the areas or one of the places that I'll get it because it's very, very secure, meaning that you're getting a good oil and you're not depleting the population. Sustainability is what the term would be for that. And then there is the oil called Australian sandalwood, and that is Santalum spicatum. Spicatum is the second word there. So Santalum spicatum, referred to as Australian sandalwood, not quite the same oil. It's not quite as rich as the Indian sandalwood, but as a replacement, it's a little less expensive than Santalum album. And, therapeutically, you're going to get, very, very, very similar properties. So these are good. These are kind of base oils, except for frankincense, depending on what form of extract you get. If you get the distillation, the essential oil, it tends to be a little bit lighter. It can be used in your base note, but not really. And that's perfumery I'm talking about, which is not the topic for today. So I'm going to skip everything I just said about perfumery, base note, top note, middle note. I'm not going to talk about that. Here's another list of oils in that graphic, that image. We're looking at helichrysum. Helichrysum italicum, that's off the Corsican coast right there, where some of the best helichrysum grows. So carrot seed, helichrysum, lavender, rose, and rosemary, verbenone, chemotype, CT, chemotype, verbenone. I'll tell you what that's all about in a second here. So carrot seed, really good oil for skincare, powerful cell regenerative properties. So And this is the wild carrot seed. And it's just a beautiful oil in skincare. Really, really good, really protective, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, all the words that we want when we talk about essential oil that's good for skincare. When it comes to sun protection, these are all oils that when I did some research, I found that they have studied the protective properties from UV damage. All of this is done in a lab. So anytime I talk about research and the studies that I've used, these are all done in a lab. I don't think there's any studies using essential oils or the plant extracts that gives it an SPF or anything like that. I don't even think SPF is relevant in this discussion, which I'll explain why in a few minutes. So carrot seed, great oil, really great oil. And then Helichrysum italicum, absolutely one of the best oils you should have in almost every skincare formula you ever make. Has the most powerful cell regenerative properties. And I've seen it do amazing things, healing a wound, reducing scars, just so many good things when it comes to skincare. And also it will protect from environmental damage, including UV radiation damage. So Helichrysum, you want to have it in your formulas. Lavender is lavender. I mean, I could have left it off the list because of course lavender, but it's there because it is one of the better oils in skincare, regenerative, antioxidant, protection. And also good for stress relief. And so central nervous system, calming the central nervous system is a good thing when you're trying to protect the skin in general, but also protecting from sun damage. Okay. Rose is just a beautiful oil and expensive. If you're going to put it in your skincare, there's ways to formulate where you keep it in there at a good therapeutic level, but you have it low enough where it doesn't increase the cost, by $30, $40 or whatever, which you can do. If you used all rose oil, yeah, it's going to be expensive. But absolutely one of the best oils therapeutically. There was a doctor at one of the scientific conferences I was attending out of Germany, and his talk was rose, cure-all, or quackery, and of course, he sided with cure-all. It does a lot. So it'd be great protecting your skin from the sun and also repairing the skin from any kind of damage that may have occurred. Rosemary CT verbenome, meaning chemotype. Essential oils, depending on where they're grown, can change their chemistry. So the same plant, in this case, rosemary, Rosmarinus officinalis, that plant, that very specific plant, depending on where it grows, will change its chemistry. So you're going to see rosemary CT cineole, and cineole is that eucalyptus smell, the one that opens up your lungs. And when you smell rosemary cineole, you smell eucalyptus-y type fragrance. So the cineole, there's a CT borneol, there's a CT, what else? There's a handful. Verbenone is a compound that's extremely good at regenerating healthy skin, also repairing cellular damage in the skin. There's a French aroma medicine recipe. All it is 1% of helichrysum, 1% of rosemary verbenone, 15% of rosehip, and the rest, whatever carrier you want. Jojoba is probably best. But that 1% helichrysum, 1% rosemary verbenone is a powerful cell regenerative formula. Good for reducing scar tissue, good for reducing fine lines. I mean, just any kind of cellular damage. That formula is ideal, and you will see it in a lot of my skincare formulas, except when I kind of get tired of being redundant. But, why stop a good thing, right? So those are the essential oils. I want to talk a little bit about the CO2, which means supercritical carbon dioxide. It's a high pressure chamber that the carbon dioxide goes through. It turns the carbon dioxide into a supercritical state, and that state is able to bind with the essence in the plant and separate it from the plant. And then you have what's called a supercritical extract. The really good supercritical extracts that I have on my list of skincare is astaxanthin. I mentioned this already. That's how you spell it, astaxanthin. It comes from a red algae. And that photograph I have next to it, I don't know if that powder is astaxanthin, but you can get it, I don't know, freeze-dried, I guess. The red in the salmon, that's why salmon is such great face food. That red comes from the red algae. The salmon eat the krill eat the algae, and that astaxanthin builds up in the tissue of the salmon. And so for our diet, we are getting a fair dose of astaxanthin when we eat salmon. It's a cool thing. So you can get astaxanthin CO2. And you got to be careful. I mean, the white shirt, ring around the collar kind of thing can happen. I've had people tell me that from some of the formulations I've done, it can put a little bit of orangey red on your white pillowcase, so you be careful. But so worth it, man. This is like, I don't know. I would use it in everything if it wasn't for that color issue where it can stain. But I use it at a low enough concentration where it's therapeutically active, but it has a tendency not to stain. It's great. So highly recommended astaxanthin supercritical extract. Now, sea buckthorn is really well known for skincare. So you have the omega-7, omega-9. You have a good mix of omega fatty acids. And so sea buckthorn can be pressed from the pulp and the seed, or both. Then you get what would be considered a fixed oil, or like a carrier oil in high concentration. If you have sea buckthorn pressed oil, you're not going to use that 100%. You're going to use that at maybe 5 to 15%. With the CO2 extracts, 2% is plenty. With astaxanthin, less than 1% is more than enough. Okay, you get bright colors mostly from carotenoids. Most familiar is a carrot. The orange in a carrot is beta carotene. Astaxanthin is a carotenoid. In sea buckthorn, you get some beta carotene and some other carotenoids. You have flavonoids, all these family of compounds that we know are so good when it comes to protecting skin. So, and also diet. I mean, this is why you eat them in your diet, because of the antioxidant protection you're getting from carotenoids, flavonoids, a whole list of phenylpropanoids and things like that. Omega-7, rosehip CO2. I get rosehip pressed oil and I get the CO2. If I want a higher concentration of some of those carotenoids, flavonoids, I will get the CO2 extract. But mostly I use the pressed oil from rosehip. Just to give you an idea of how potent rosehip is, years and years and years ago, Aubrey Organics. So Aubrey wrote a book, and it was okay. Aubrey Organics, I don't think was ever natural or organic, but they were kind of the kid on the block when I started doing all this stuff. And in his book, he had a photograph of a woman who looked like she went through the windshield of her car. She looked like, puzzle pieces with the way the scars were. And I can't remember what the timeline was. I think it was about 6 months of using just rosehip seed oil. Her skin was almost completely smoothed out. It was amazing to see that. And rosehip is just a potent skincare remedy. And like I said, helichrysum 1%, rosemary verbenone 1%, rosehip seed at 15% with a carrier oil to fill the rest. Incredible for scar reduction, which means incredible for just general skincare. That's the way that works. Now, we'll look at a few base oils. This is the carrier oils, if you want to call them that. Let me pull that up for you. So the base oils, we'll start with rosehip seed. And rosehip seed is, use it. Use it. It's amazing skincare oil. Like I said, omega-3 fatty acids, or I didn't say that yet, but that's what it has. It has the carotenoids, which I have mentioned. It has tocopherols, which is vitamin E. It may have, let me see, the alpha tocopherols, gamma, all four. I'm not sure what the composition is, but it may have the tocotrienols, which the gamma tocotrienol is actually has the highest antioxidant protection. I think it was the gamma tocotrienol. Sea buckthorn. See, I'm repeating what I just gave you before, because these are pressed, but supercritical is going to be more concentrated. So if you want to try and avoid some of the color issues, staining issues, get the pressed oil rather than the supercritical extract. If you want more concentration of these incredibly therapeutic compounds, you do the supercritical extract at a lower concentration. Don't want to do high concentrations. I mean, it's not going to hurt you. It may stain, but you just don't need it, right? So more than anything else, not a safety issue, lower concentrations of supercritical extracts is you just don't need that much. You're getting plenty of therapeutic activity out of, anywhere from 0.5% to 2% of these. Sometimes I'll use the 5% of rosehip seed or sea buckthorn, because the way that the supercritical extract is done, it does have that fatty acid composition, which is what you're getting mostly from the pressed oil. Then cranberry, raspberry, blackberry seed oils. This was something that I found when I originally formulated my serum that I told you I was using, and finding that I wasn't getting the sunburn. I'm going to explain that more, because I don't want you not wearing sunscreen, okay? Like I said, don't do what I do what I say. Now, the cranberry, raspberry, blackberry seeds, a really good balance of omega-3, omega-6 fatty acids. And like I said, I developed this from my diet and the supplements that I take. When I developed this skin serum, cranberry, raspberry, blackberry seeds weren't available for the cosmetic industry. They were available for the supplement industry, and that's where I had to buy these oils from, except for the blackberry seed. This is the beauty of progress. All these oils, there's so much more availability of some of these incredible oils that are good for your skin. Now, I live in Seattle. I can look out my window and I'm watching the blackberry bushes, and I'm right in the city. I'm looking at blackberry bushes that are ready to blossom. There's just going to be tons of blackberries right outside my door. If I walk up the staircase that goes up the hill, I will be surrounded by blackberry bushes. When I was searching for blackberry seed oil, I could not find any in the Seattle area, in the Washington State area. I had to bring it up from Colombia, South America. That's just crazy, crazy. Now, they're starting to produce it over in Eastern Washington. And so you can get blackberry seed oil now, cranberry seed, raspberry seed. The reason I have those listed together is they're very, very, very similar with the carotenoids, flavonoids, vitamin E, different forms of vitamin E, and then the omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acid content, very high in omega-3 for vegetable oil, which is ideal, really good. You want to have omega-3 fatty acids in your diet, and you want to have omega-3 fatty acids on your skin. So let me talk about hyperpigmentation here for a moment. And with hyperpigmentation, it is the melanin accumulating and then not breaking down following sun exposure or any kind of UV exposure. And when that accumulates, and again, that little kid that I showed you with all the sunburn, sometimes they're called age spots, brown spots, hyperpigmentation, that shows up years and years and years later. Right? You notice as you age, you start getting more and more hyperpigmentation. It's because of the accumulation over the years. And so even if you're not seeing any of this yet, you should start this kind of program, a protective program from UV damage now. Start now. Start yesterday. Start 10 years ago. But if not, if you missed that window, start now. And you'll see that potentially you can prevent that. And it's always potentially. No matter what kind of research we have, no matter what kind of evidence, everything is always, will it work? Will it not work? I don't know. And that's just the way that's the way everything works, but especially with plants. So in some ways, we need to figure out what's going to work for you. But this list that I'm giving you with all these oils, it's use it, see what happens. But there's plenty of choices with similar properties, secondary metabolites, extraction methods, all that will actually benefit your skin personally. Now, hyperpigmentation, here's astaxanthin again, and this comes from the research. And tyrosinase, that's the enzyme that we want to inhibit in order to prevent hyperpigmentation. And so I could have written that on all three of these, but I think I changed the language again just so I wouldn't be so redundant, but it's redundant. They all do the same thing. So again, it's astaxanthin, supercritical extract, CO2 is something you should have in a skincare formula if your goal is to prevent the damage from UV rays, UV radiation. Rosehip seed oil, here it is again. This is in vivo. They used human skin, but it wasn't like on the human. So we don't know what the interaction is. Once you start getting into physiology, biology, and what's happening in the body, diet, environmental exposure, stress levels, all that stuff, these are all the things that you need to consider no matter what you're doing. I'm giving you guidelines here, but once you're working with somebody, it's very individual on how you want to help them protect their skin or regenerate healthy skin. But rosehip and astaxanthin, I mean, you can't go wrong with any skin type there because they're both amazing. And then rose essential oil also does prevent hyperpigmentation. I could make that list, a lot longer. In fact, all of the ingredients or botanicals that I'm talking about today have the potential for preventing hyperpigmentation. Here's helichrysum italicum. I'm repeating a lot of oils, but these are the best. Anything that I repeat over and over and over again, you absolutely should have in your skincare. You should. It's just the way it should work. Carrot seed. Again, I'm repeating carrot seed. I don't really use carrot seed too much in my formulations. And the only reason is because I don't reach for it too often. But I do have it in a few. I have it in one that I made for a spa chain, and they want it for mature skin, which, to me is just healthy aging. It's like as we age, what you want to do is you want to help protect the skin from all the environmental damage. And as we age, things start to not function quite as well. But if you diet, nutrition, proper skincare, you're going to, you can prevent a lot of the damage that occurs that we call aging process. So carrot seed, extremely, extremely good oil for regenerating healthy skin cells. Just amazing. Now I want to talk about photosensitivity. It's a topic that needs to be addressed here. And what that is, photosensitivity is, it's actually sun damage that is increased by certain compounds. And one of the main compounds or a group of compounds is furanocoumarins, okay? These are in the pressed oils, the pressed peel oils. One of the main cautions is with bergamot. Bergamot contains the highest amount of furanocoumarins. And what happens is they react with UV radiation. And so instead of protecting from the damage, it actually increases the damage. If you put bergamot on your skin at a high concentration and go out directly into the sun, you increase the chances of sunburn. In fact, you increase the chances of serious sunburn. You also increase the chances of hyperpigmentation and other forms of sun damage using bergamot on your skin. And so bergamot's the big one, but also the other oils are lemon, lime, grapefruit and orange, not quite the big scare, but, ignore them, okay? Now, you can get a furanocoumarin. They take that out of the oil. So you can get a bergamot that has no furanocoumarins in. I just don't use it. I don't buy anything that's been adjusted. Even that, though that oil is, doesn't fall into the adulterated category. it's still, I want the whole oil. And so I just don't use bergamot. I don't use lemon. I don't use lime. Some formulas have grapefruit or orange, but very minimal amounts. Now, the sun exposure, what you want to avoid is 12 to 18 hours. So if you have a massage with bergamot in your formula, don't go out into the direct sun for 12 to 18 hours. Now, if you're just out kind of hanging out, walking around, you maybe have a little bit of sun exposure, short sleeves, but you have a hat on, it's not as risky, but be aware and don't go out into direct sunlight after using bergamot, lime, lemon, and we'll just include grapefruit and orange. There's a couple other oils, which would be angelica root and cumin seeds, that have another form of the coumarins that also will produce damage when exposed to UV rays. So that's the story on photosensitivity. Don't use it. Don't do it. All right, now I want to talk a little bit about diet, because diet is so important. I'm going to have to do this kind of quick because I want to get to some recipes. This is my diet, called the rainbow diet. I look for colors. That's what I look for. Actually, I don't. I look for the foods that I like, but the foods that I like have lots of color. That means the flavonoids and the carotenoids and all the other really beautiful secondary metabolites that plants produce. Those provide protection from UV damage. So you want to have that rainbow diet. I've actually talked about this before. I mentioned the salmon. I mentioned the blackberries here in Seattle. I think, man, Seattle, it has the best face food. It really does. So put a salmon, blackberries, a couple other berries, some greens into a blender, grind it all up and throw that on your face. And that would be so disgusting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to put these foods on your face after I explain how good they are as supplementation and as your diet, your nutrition, the things that you want to do anyway to protect your overall health. This is what you should be doing. And the added benefit is you're protecting yourself from UV damage. So what I'm saying here is topical application, the serums that I'm going to be talking about aren't enough. You need to have dietary protection, okay? So the phytonutrients that are in these plants, secondary metabolites, they provide protection against UV-induced cancer, photoaging, and they do it from within. These are all things I found in research studies, okay? So everything I'm talking about, I did some extensive research because, like I said, I wrote a scientific paper, excuse me, on this, which you can get from, I can't remember which one, but if you go to, what is it, Pacific Institute of Aromatherapy, Kurt Schnaubelt, he has a series of books from, it's the proceedings from the conferences, the scientific conferences that Kurt used to put on. And in one of those, I think it might be East-West, my paper on botanical sun care is in there. And then I have it published in a few other places as well. So yeah, I did dig up the research and I can explain that in a lot more depth. I'm not going to get too deep into that, but I can explain how you take that research and make it work as a sun protective method or process. Saturation is really important. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. Why do I have a can of tomato paste in this picture? Well, because lycopene, the carotenoid in tomatoes, it's at a high amount in tomato paste, right? It can be about 16 milligrams. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. Just not yet. But I'm going to tell you about saturation. And it has to do with the tomato paste, and it has to do with my own experiences and experiences of people who have used my skincare, that this is not sun protection. This is not UV protection in the way that we think of it. It does not block the sun, and it does not, I don't even know what those oxybenzene things do, but they're toxic besides not being good for your skin. It's not sun protection in the way we think about it. When we think about an SPF, there's no SPF to what I'm going to be talking about. But I am going to talk about saturation. And saturation is the thing you want to focus on here. Now, what I learned is that if you were using this in 4 weeks, not much is going to happen. 10 weeks in all the research that I've found is where you're getting the protection. And that's what I learned as far as using the word saturation. That's what I mean by saturation. So here's just a quick list of the compounds that I've been talking about, mostly in herbal extracts and in your food. You have the polyphenols, you have terpenes that are in the essential oils, organosulfides, those are the sulfur-containing compounds that you get in broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and polysaccharides, which is hyaluronic acid and acetylglucosamine. Those you mainly get from, if you're a vegan, you're not going to use those things because they come from like the rooster thing and shells, seashells, things like that. So you can get supplementation through plants, plant extracts. This is just the compounds that you're getting out of all this. Okay, this is why you eat the foods. This is why you do the extracts. Now I've talked about the rainbow diet. So here's just a few things that I think should be in your diet. So like I said, you take these foods, put them into a blender. Oh, no. I said that would be disgusting. So don't do that. I'll give you some recipes that take these foods and put them into something that's more enjoyable and really good for your skin. So salmon, omega-3 fatty acids, and the astaxanthin, and really good digestible protein. So salmon is a very good food. Also halibut doesn't have the astaxanthin, but halibut has a good concentration of omega-3 fatty acids that you want to do. If you are vegan, there are plant sources with high amounts of omega-3 fatty acids. I haven't listed a lot of those here, and I probably should. Kale, kale is just one of those foods we go, eat kale. It's really good for you. It does have zeaxanthin, similar to astaxanthin. It's a carotenoid, really good for your eyes, the zeaxanthin, but will also be good as an antioxidant, protecting from free radical damage that the sun may cause. Has a bit of the sulforaphane, I can say that, fluorophane, and vitamin C, vitamin E, vitamin K. I don't know how much. I guess it would have vitamin C. Yeah. It's usually the extracts. Some lipid extracts, oil extracts, they say they have vitamin C, but I think that's wrong because vitamin C is water soluble. It would not occur in a fat environment. Tomatoes, lycopene, 40 grams of tomato paste daily for 10 weeks results in 40% less UV-induced erythema. That is sun damage, sunburn. This is what I was going to tell you about earlier, but I decided to hold it for right now and why I learned about saturation. This is several studies I found using tomato paste, 1 can of tomato paste, but it had to be 16 milligrams of lycopene is what they were measuring. The participants would eat this every day. That's Italian, huh? I don't even know if I could do that because maybe I'm only half Italian. Half a can of tomato paste would be my tolerant. Anyway, that's not the subject. The subject is eating a can of tomato paste, 16 milligrams of lycopene. After 4 weeks, what they found was there was no real protection from UV damage. After 6 weeks, there was minimal. And after 10 weeks, it's that 40% less. But I saw studies where it was almost 100% that they were looking at protection. That's from sunburn. And this is lycopene. This is eating it, not even putting anything on topically. This is eating the tomato paste. So this is why I highly recommend diet, supplementation, and topical, internal, external. Now, I was just going to point out something else about saturation. That's what I wanted to get into. So this is where I learned the saturation. Even topically, you need to use this every day and not expect protection for at least 10 weeks. You'll get some protection, especially if you've been eating a good diet. When I started noticing I was getting protection using my serum, I was already on all of these foods. So I was already eating a really healthy antioxidant diet. So I had that internal saturation. The external saturation, I actually did some testing on myself to see how that saturation point works. And so 10 weeks, if you expect coverage in 10 weeks. Now, I'm not saying don't use any kind of sunscreen when you're out in the direct sun. This is kind of like every day hanging out, where you may not need to use a sunscreen. I'm never going to tell you not to use it, though. That's not my deal. So the eggs also really good, lutein and zeaxanthin there too, really good for your eyes, antioxidant. There's sulfur compounds in the eggs. So you have a really good diet there. Now, what you want to do is you want to increase that with some really yummy foods, chocolates and coffee and berries. Yeah, they all have all these compounds. So let me give you this up close because I'm going to just breeze by this and get to the recipes. So these are things I'm sure you like eating. Have a little bit of tea after a meal and eat some grapes with some cacao is what I would recommend. 100% dark chocolate. That's what I like. No sugar, nothing like that. And then the berries, blackberries, cranberries, raspberries, all those things that are so good for you. Really good sun protection coming from the berries, which I've already talked about. This is internal, okay? And like I said earlier, I taught that this diet would be the best thing to put on your face before anyone was creating the skincare to put this diet on your face. And so when I developed the serum, it was very much as the extracts from these. And I do not, minimally refined. I want to see the colors. I want to deal with kind of releasing or reversing or preventing the staining that comes from these compounds. But I'm going to use those extracts. I'll figure it out in formulation how to make it work as topical. So here's the formulas. I don't know why I'm giving away my great formulas, but here we go. I'm doing it. Take a quick shot of this because I'm only leaving that up for a second, and your second is up. That is a full spectrum formula. Whenever I say full spectrum, what I look at is everything I can possibly think of that how the sun would damage skin. Everything I can possibly think about that our emotions, our diet, our lifestyle, all of these things I incorporate into how I produce pretty much everything. And so a full spectrum formula, that's where I go, well, I know this and those ingredients are in there, but I don't know a lot of this information. And if I know I don't know something, why don't I just create really intensely holistic formulations that can address many factors, even the ones I don't know about? So you want to understand that what you don't know is what you don't know, but pay attention that there are things you don't know and incorporate that I don't know into your skincare formulas. Did that make sense, what I just said? I hope so. So here we go. Copaiba. Good base oil as far as fragrance because it doesn't add a lot of fragrance and it holds, it's dense enough, heavier structure where it holds the lighter molecules into your formula, which is what perfumery is all about. These percentages is like, so you can do anything. You can do it by weight, you can do it by drops, you can do whatever. You got to figure out the percentage. I'm not going to teach you how to do that now. And then I have different formulations for face and for body. The reason I have different is because I only want 1.5% total essential oils in my facial formula. 1.5%. If you do it for body, you can do 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%, whatever makes you happy. But you can do more body. Always keep it at 1.5% on your face. And that's the essential oils, okay? Now, frankincense, carrot seed, helichrysum, lavender, rose. I mean, I've already told you all these about why they're so miraculously beautiful and incredible. And this formula is going to smell really good too. So you do want your fragrances to be there. So that would be your formulation. Here again, I'm going to give away sunflower seed oil. I found lots of research, lots of evidence showing the protection from UV damage with just sunflower seed oil. So take a snap of that because I'm going to explain what I'm doing here. So the sunflower seed oil is a good base oil. It's relatively inexpensive. Actually, a lot of it was coming from the Ukraine. And so the world is making things, actually politicians are making things a little more expensive for us all the way around. But sunflower is still, one of the lower cost oils with a lot of potential for therapeutic properties, including protection from UV damage. Jojoba oil also has some evidence for protection from UV damage. Really beautiful oil. And jojoba is a liquid wax. It's very similar to the sebum of our skin. And because of that, it doesn't go rancid. So it does not oxidize. So it's actually a good oil all on its own as a skincare formulations to protect from damage, but also it has a lot of regenerative properties and other properties that just really good for your skin. Cranberry seed oil, I have it in there at 15%, so you can tell that is the pressed oil that I'm talking about. If it was the CO2 extract, I would have written sea buckthorn CO2. So the pressed oil. If you do get the CO2 extract and want to use that, drop that down to about 2 to 3%. You don't need 15%. And then you can raise either jojoba or sunflower seed oil to balance that out. The essential oils, again, 1.5% for the face, 3% for the body. And this is a formulation for 30 mil. You'll notice that it's 30 mil. And then you have, I have that at 30 mil. I did do it right. Talking about something that I did earlier that I thought I had to mention, but then I fixed it and then I don't have to mention it anymore. If you want to follow the words that are coming out of my mouth as my brain is spinning, trying to give you as much information as I can about, I don't know what. But I am talking about 30 mils in your bottle. And this is the formulation for making that work as far as the percentage, or not the percentages, but the numbers that I have there. So that's a great base oil. I mean, that's a great formulation right there. Very simple. In what I have in my formulas, I like to use shea butter and I like to use cocoa butter, a few other butters, mango, things like that. And then I have, green tea extract. I mean, I use a lot of ingredients in my skincare formula. So here we go. This is sensible use. Don't do what I do what I say. And that's, it's not a substitute for broad spectrum sunscreen. If you want to experiment on yourself, see when it works and when it doesn't work, make sure you get the 10-week saturation or more. Make sure your diet is high in antioxidants. Again, if you don't want to do what I do, then don't do what I do, which is I don't use sunscreen. When I go directly into the sun, I do use sunscreen or I put a hat on, which is, I'm kind of lame. I mean, I really am. I'm, just kind of a, yeah. And I go out into the sun and I'm not wearing a hat, and then I feel it. And that's when I, wish I had a hat, or I grab it because I remember, I should be wearing a hat. But I've made mistakes before, and I've seen just how potent these formulas can be. So again, use sunscreen, but expect more from using internal, external formulation, plant-based formulation, like what I'm talking about here. Now, I guess the other statement that I have for your botanical system, it's in conjunction. Just do this because, the sunscreen products, they're not complete either. So if you're doing both, you're getting really good protection from UV damage. And I recommend doing the serum twice a day, every day, whether you're going to be in the sun or not. It's that saturation thing, but also just in general, I did not make this formula. The things that I just showed you, I did not make those formulas for sun protection. That wasn't on my list of what will this formula do. Everything I'm showing you is absolutely what the best formulation for general skincare is. Every type of skin, doesn't matter. And when I say, I have that serum, and when I was selling it, when I was working with the company that sells that, I would do demos and talk to people, and they say, well, what type of skin is this for? And why don't you have formulas for skin type? My main answer was it's plant-based, it's botanicals. How often do you go to the produce section of your store looking for produce for your skin type? Probably never. And so when it comes to the botanical formula, extracts from that very same produce, you don't need it for skin type. What I do recommend, so the skincare formula that I make, it's very, very dense and can be diluted. So if you have oily skin, put a little water, palm of your hand, and just use a little bit of the formula, spread it on your skin. If you have dry skin, you can use 2 applications. And so it's more about application for skin type when it comes to plant-based formulation, not what type of skin do you have. It's how are you going to apply it is what the procedure is going to be. So here's the thing. Start now. Build up serum levels. Supplementation, diet, and the serum, okay? And then you tailor this approach to your individual skin type. That's what I was just saying. You're going to tailor how these feel on your skin. Use less, use more, whatever. And if you're making this for yourself or for your guests, you can adjust, if you're really going to do, this kind of gets into personalization, which I think it needs to be charged for, as well as, because you're taking time. If you're going to build even that base formula, you're going to use sunflower, you're going to use coconut oil, or you're going to use jojoba, you're going to use olive oil. You have all these choices, right? And they can all be adjusted to the person as well as to the person's skin type. But it's that application that really makes the difference. That's tailoring your approach to how this works. So I think I've given you my recipe. I've given you the reasons why you use it. Just to recap, what you're looking at is you're taking this on as a system and a ritual and a lifestyle. It's pretty much everything you do, right? So that's how you approach protecting your skin from sun damage. In my retreats that I do, and these essential oil-led experiential immersions, and I do a thing on sun care. In some of these immersions, I talk about how to incorporate this into your life. I'm just kind of giving you the things that you want to do, but it actually should become a lifestyle, because lifestyle is the easiest way to incorporate all of this into your daily practice. It becomes a lifestyle, and then you're not thinking about it. You're just doing it, right? And so in the essential oil-led immersive experiential retreats that I do, this is the kind of system. I can do it for stress. I can do it for sleep. And I love my storytelling piece that I do in the retreats, where we take a story and we create an essential oil formula from it. It's really fun. For sun care, I've given you some of the basics of what you want to do. And, that's going to do it for me for today. If you'd like to book me for a retreat or anything going on at your spa, I do staff training as well. And I usually combine it with the retreats. If you bring me in for a retreat, I actually like to take time to teach the staff how to do the things that I'm doing in the retreat. But you can contact me at jimharrison.com. That's the best place to go, just my website. Or you can go on and do this, send me an email. I'm there, I'm here, wherever. But for now, you guys, really appreciate you hanging out with me for another hour. If you have any questions, you know where to find me. So until next time, thank you, and I'll see you later.